Also heating up here on page 20. Okay, 23b at the very bottom, last line. Everyone hadn't heard the word piggle in a while. They missed it. Well, it's not coming today, don't worry. So, Salar Kahana, when Kahana went up to Eretz Yisrael, he ended up meeting up with the sons of Rabbi Chia. And the Yosef Amri, a number of questions back and forth about combination of measurements of flour. So, the Yosef Amri Isaran Shechilku, the Hinichu. What did you say? Coffee? Yeah, coffee. Maybe he wants the Hebrew one. Yes, he's working on it. Maybe we'll give him a lead right now. So I don't know. He's looking down. V'hinichu bebisa. So what happened is you put two halves. So isaron is the measurement. It's a measurement of flour. You put two halves of that in a bisa. Bisa is a bowl, and the two halves are not touching each other. 24a. So you have two halves of flour that are in a bowl, and they're not touching each other. And this is called the concept of tziruf kalim. Tziruf kalim is when you have two measurements of flour inside a bowl, do you say they combine? Now, apparently it's a big debate. Is this a biblical rule or is it a rabbinic rule? But the point is that a vessel itself could combine the contents inside of it. So, I don't want you come today 12 o'clock to hear about potatoes. No. Yeah. So so what's the lakha? So we're going to bring a number of mishnah. First one is our mishnah. Kitnan kli mitzarif mashav v'sokol l'kadesh. Sorry, not our mishnah. The Mishnah Chagiga says that a kli combines that which is within it to sanctify it. So the example there is that you have a tful yom, so somebody who's impure, who went to the mikveh, who's waiting for sunset. Now you have contents of a sanctified food in a vessel, and a tful yom, he only touched one part of the contents of the vessel, but they're both in one vessel. So does that render the other part that he didn't touch, but is still in the vessel, impure or not? Yeah. So the Mishnah there says, Kli mitzarif mashav v'sokol l'kadesh. So it says the Gemara, Lo. Maybe over there the two contents are touching each other. So you touched one. It happens to be touching the other. So maybe that's why it's going to cause impurity to the other. Even though you didn't touch it, but you touch A is connected to B, so that's why B is impure. But here in our case where they're not touching, maybe it cannot combine. They won't combine, and therefore in our case, one second. In our case, where they're not touching, so if you contaminate one part of the flour, it will not contaminate the other part of the flour. Odil Maloshna, or it doesn't matter as long as you're in one vessel. So if part of it that you touch gets contaminated, then the other part is going to be contaminated as well. Yeah. Amar lahu ihu. So now they said to him, the sons of Rabbi Chia said to him, Amar lahu ihu, mitnan kli mechaber, kli mitzarif tnan. What phraseology did the Mishnah use? Did it say a kli mechaber, a vessel that unites, or it just said kli mitzarif? How did it just say kli mitzarif? That joins, not connects, but joins. This didn't say a vessel that connects, rather a vessel that joins, so that combines. So mitan kli mechaber, kli mitzarif tnan. So even a kolduhu, meaning sounds like even if they're not touching, but they're in the same vessel, that should be enough. that should be enough. So maybe you can bring a proof from the wording that it's not something which is they're not joined together, but they are combined together. So maybe that would help us that even if it's not touching, it would combine, and therefore, if you touch one half of the flour, the other half the other half that's in the same bowl is going to be impure. Yeah, we're gonna get more and more technical today. So okay. Not always this technical, don't worry. So, but okay. Hoshit echad lebeinehen mahu. So here, you put your hand in between the two halves. I believe your hand is not touching anything. It's in the airspace between the two halves. So now, mahu amr le tzarich lekli kli mitzarfo in.
The other thing, putting in another Isserot in the same.
Is that case? Sorry, yeah, good. Yeah, we're having that case later on. Good. So, Hoshit echad lebeinei mahu. He puts another half of a measurement between these two. You have really A and B, and now you put something in between them. So, Amar le sarich lekli. So, sarich lekli, the things, the two halves of the flour, so they need the vessel. They should combine kli mitzarfo, and ein sarich lekli, ein kli mitzarfo. So, do we say that the ones that need the vessel could combine? The ones that don't need the vessel, the third one doesn't join together. So, if you're going to touch A, the one in the middle is not going to get contaminated because it doesn't need the vessel. The other two need the vessel, and therefore they can combine. But the third half measurement that was put in doesn't need the vessel because it's coming from somewhere else, and therefore it's not going to combine, and therefore it will not become impure. Yeah, so let's say the middle one got contaminated, the one that came from the outside. So it would not contaminate A and B, or whatever. A and C, okay, A, B, and C. B came from the outside, and A and C are here. So if B becomes contaminated, since it doesn't need the vessel, we don't say that the vessel is going to combine all of them together and render the other ones impure. Okay, here's the case I jumped the gun. Yeah. Hoshit tvul yom es etzba'o. Now the tvul yom puts his finger in between them. Mahu. So Amar Lahu, he said to the sons of Ruchia, Ein chadavar shemitame ma'aviro elek licheres bilvad. It's interesting to know what this question exactly was, but he says the only thing that contaminates airspace is a kli cheres. That we know. We know when it comes to contamination. So everything else you have to touch it, rest on it, lie on it, whatever it is. But the airspace to be contaminated is only an earthenware vessel. That can get contaminated through the airspace. That's only a kli cheres, nothing else. So in our case, that's not going to help over here. Okay. So now this is all them asking him questions. Now, Hadar Ihu, Bo Minayu. He turned back and asked them questions. Okay, let me ask you a question. So Mahu, Likmot Mizeh Al Zeh. So let's say you have two halves. So you have an Isaron as a measurement, two halves in a vessel. And now you take kmitza from one half. Does that work for the other half or not? Meaning usually you have one vessel of flour. You take kmitza from the whole thing. In this case, it's split up into two, A and B. So you only took kmitza from A. Does that work for B? Or does that not work for B? So, ma'ulik mutz mizeh al zeh. So, tziruf de araisa or de rabbanon. Is this combination rabbinical or is it biblical? So, if it's rabbinic, it's not going to help you. We're talking about biblical obligations of taking off flour. It's not going to help you. If it's biblical, then it will help you. So, Amrulo, they said to him, Zu lo shamanu. Your exact question, I don't know. I don't have an answer. However, kiyotze bo shamanu. But I have a similar case for you. Yeah. So the Tanan shtei menachos shlo nikmatzu v'nitz arvu zu b'zu. You have our Mishnah from 2 daf ago. You have 2 flour obligations that were not yet nikmatzu, that the flour has not been removed from them. V'nitz arvu zu b'zu. And now the 2 flour offerings get mixed together. Now, the way Rashi explained this is that part of it is recognizable where it came from. You're looking in your vessel and you see this part, I think, is from Mincha A, from the flour offering A, and this part's from flour offering B. But the other part of them are all mixed together. So you have part of the offering is discernible, and the other part is not. So the Mishnah, what is that? Whole wheat and white, right? So the Mishnah said, as long as you could take off from each of them enough to fulfill your kmitza obligation, so then you're good to go. If too much and mixed in and only a little bit is discernible, so then that's not enough for your obligation. So now, they're both going to be good. It's not enough that you can discern where it came from. Then taking the kmitzav is not going to help you. Now, in the event that you could take off kmitzav, so miyak sheres, it sounds like nevertheless they're good. Meaning, if you have enough of A and enough of B that you recognize that A is A and B is B, then you could take off. So now, amai hach deme'arev halo naga, the part that's mixed together. The part that's mixed together, meaning the part that's not discernible. So that part, I don't know why. The assumption is that it's not necessarily touching the other part. Now, how is it not touching the other part?
Part is touching, the other part is not touching.
So where is it?
Oh, 2 menachos are connected in a way that resemble the 2 teeth of a bone.
No, not yet.
No, okay.
That's the answer.
Oh.
So somehow you have 2 flour offerings you put into a vessel, and you have A and B, part of A and part of B that are recognizable, enough of a measurement that you can take off from A and take off from B, and you're good to go. However, the parts of A and B that are not recognizable aren't touching necessarily A and B that are recognizable. I guess. I don't know.
The other party, but they're not. One part.
What exactly is the case? I don't know. There's a gap between. How do you get a gap between them? We're talking about. We're gonna shoot you a time. So, meaning the problem's like this. The problem is that we're trying to prove, do vessels combine? Do contents in a vessel combine? Yes or no? So you have here part of the flour offering which you're removing to put onto the altar. Now, part of the shirayim, the remnants we're suing now, are not necessarily touching the top part due to some kind of gap in the vessel or something like that. So I'm thinking now. Sometimes you have some kind of Steve or something like that you have the contents on the top and contents on the bottom. I don't know. But the problem is like this: if they're not touching each other, so then how is it working for your flour offering? If you say a vessel does not combine its contents, then you're taking, in essence, the part that's not touching is separate from the other part. So you view it as a totally separate flour. So that those aren't the remnants. That's something else. So it must be the fact that you could take off part of it. It's going to combine. It shows you that contents in a vessel do combine. So maybe or maybe it means like layers. It means that the two parts on top that are discernible, right? They're not touching the entire thing because I don't know. Either way, fine. That's my homework. So amai, but hello naga, they're not touching. I just think it means like this: the bottom tissue in this tissue box is not touching the top tissue. There's 100 tissues in between. I think that's all it means. The remnants on the bottom are not directly touching the top. They're only touching through the contents of the vessel. That's all it means. Meaning, liquid is different. If you liquid is always one thing, you don't divide up liquid into different parts. Your liquid's all one cup. But when you're talking about flour, a lot of the bottom particles of flour that are your remnants are not touching the top. But I guess that's true in every single case. You do flour to a vessel. It's not unique. Yeah. I think that's the point. Every flour, all the particles on the bottom don't touch the ones on the top.
Each minute is large enough for pizza, which
True.
is part of the other. The more assumes that there's a gap between the portion suitable for pizza and the rest of the minute.
There's a gap. Okay.
There's a gap.
How do you have a gap? So I know where you live. We are doing practical.
This is in the chemistry lab.
We are doing practical. So don't let him get away with it. Amar Rava.
There's a different one. You'll get the water and then
Separation. Okay.
That's in the mix.
I'll do my homework. Either way, I'll do my homework. Amar Rava, no. So Rava says, who says that they're not touching? Maybe this will help us. Dilma begushin amichulakin. I assume it gives Kemisra. Maybe we're talking about more solid pieces of flour that are combined together, divided up like a comb. So meaning on a comb, you have all the teeth of the comb. Thank you. The teeth of the comb are separate, but they're all attached on the bottom. So maybe that's a case that we're talking about, and therefore you don't have a proof because they really are attached. Fine. Either way, my havi Allah. What is the answer to our question? I mean, they asked him, can you do pizza from one half onto another half? And yet we don't have the answer. Yeah. Amar Rava, Tashma, let's see. The Brisa says, the tiny of hearing men in a mechubar, shlo yavi isaron b'shnei kelim v'yikmot. It says in the verse in Vayikra. So in the 6th chapter, 8th verse, it says you should take from it, the kumtzah misolas mincha. You should take from it. So what's from it? Min mechubar, that from the part from when they're connected, coming to exclude shlo yavi isaron b'shnei kelim. I mean, you cannot have a isaron of flour divided up into two different vessels. V'yikmot. It has to be from one vessel. That's what it says. Now, the implication of that is, but a hal b'kli echad, dumya dishnei kelim kamen. So, right, all the Brisa tells us is you can't have one isaron, one measurement of flour, divide up into two separate vessels, right? So let's teach the biggest novelty, which would teach you that any way it's in one vessel will be fine. Even if in one vessel it's similar to two vessels. What does it mean that in one vessel it's similar to two vessels? They're not touching each other in one vessel. It's one vessel, but the two halves are not touching each other. So that's similar to two vessels. So if you infer like that from the Brisa, that teaches you that combination works, and therefore a kmitza from one half will work for the other half. So that's Rava's suggested answer. Amar Abaye, maybe you can infer a different way, and then you lose your answer. Dilma shnei kelim hechinami. When this Brisa taught us that you can't have it in two vessels, what was it talking about exactly? So it's talking about kegon kefiza bekaba. It was when it had two vessels. What is that? Yeah, a kviza is 3/4 of a kav. So meaning you had a vessel with basically a smaller, and you put some minchen, and you put it into a vessel that's larger. Imagine putting a small cup into a big cup, right? So it fits in. So now you have flour in the 3/4 kav cup, the smaller cup, and then you put it in, and then you have another flour in the larger cup, and you put one inside the other. And now you want to know if I take off kmitza from the top, is it going to work for the bottom? And that the Brisa said it will not work. Okay. Now, once we establish the Brisa to be this case, so let's see how we're going to infer our case. So So kigon kfiza bekabed apagav de ariva mi iloi. They are connected, right? I mean, one's inside the other, but given the mifsak mechitasa, the kfiza mitata. But since there's a mechitza, meaning the bottom vessel, the bottom of the top vessel separates the top vessel from the bottom vessel. Just like you put a cup inside a cup, right? They're connected because they're inside, one inside the other, but they're also not connected because the bottom of the top cup is a mechitza, is a separation between the bottom cup. So now that's when the Torah tells you that. That's when the Torah tells you that you cannot, that it's not going to work. However, let's say you have one vessel, hakli echad, dumya d'shtei kelim. So now the inference is if you have one vessel similar to these two vessels. So what case is that? What's the case? Kigon arevas tarnagolin. For example, in arevas tarnagolin. So you have a what is that? Yeah, meaning you have where you have food and drink with a separation, right? So meaning you have water on top or
the long narrow thing with this.
So the thing in the middle. Okay, so your thing in the middle, and that but that's not really such a separation because it's a very low machitza, it's a very low separation, and so now kigon the arvis targon the afagav the mifsakon mechitzasa. So maybe in that case where it's really one, just with a small mechitza, therefore it will combine. However, in our case, meaning, I don't think it's long. I think it's not long. It's not long. It's a case where I think it's already like a bowl, some kind of a bowl of sorts, and it's a bowl of sorts where there's a very thin mechitza between it, but I think they both touch at the top. There's just a separation on the bottom. No, how do they say it?
Vessel that is like a tropical chicken, which is divided by low barrier, two sections, one for water, one for food.
Okay, so therefore, in our case, you can't bring up proof because why?
So the barrier separates parts from each other. They are still touching.
Right. So meaning, so how do you have it? Part of the barrier separates part of them, but not the top of them.
We'll have the heat is lower than the sides of the vessel. It's the parts of the vessel are separated by the wall. They are connected to each other in the vessel's airspace. This is a valid connection. Right.
So you have a case. We have the 2 minute offerings with the small little mechitza. So but yet they're still touching on some level. Our case, where they're not touching at all, that's where we're asking our question. So in that case, they're still somewhat touching to each other. They're just somewhat divided also, but it's still somewhat touching. We're asking a case where they're not touching at all. If they're not touching at all, can one vessel combine them? And if you take knitza off of one, is that going to help you for the other?
I think what they say, you've got a bowl.
Okay.
The lamachitz in the middle.
Okay.
The two different flowers don't touch each other because they're physically separated by the little mechitza.
Okay.
But there's airspace still within the bowl that covers both of
them.
So they're not physically covered. They're not physically touching, but they're treated as touching because you've still got one key basically.
No, but then it would be a proof for us.
You've got one bowl and you've got the airspace which makes them.
It has to be that somehow on top they're touching. Meaning, imagine you had but you had right now you fill up your cup. You fill up your cup with oatmeal. I don't know. Yeah, you fill up your cup with oatmeal, right? Or a bowl. Forget a cup. A bowl. On the bottom, you can put like a little divider that the bottom inch of the bowl or whatever it is divided up, but the top is still touching each other. just the bottom is divided up. So this chicken, let's say, right, it's not going to be able to reach up high. So down low where it reaches, you're going to have a separation between water and food. But yeah. So okay, gotta pull out the visuals. So yeah. Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah, Siruf Kli v'Chibur Mayim. Okay. Now it gets more exciting. Yeah. Okay, so this case, yeah. So you have A, B, and C. You have A and B are connected by a vessel. But now B and C are connected by a stream of water. So now you have half of an isaron in one vessel, half of measure in one vessel. They're not touching. You have another half of an isaron is outside the vessel, but it's connected by a stream, either by a flow or by a stream of water, and that actually connects. But it is mamish can't be about the cholent pot. You put water into the cholent pot by the hot water urn, so the stream comes down to the cholent. There are those that say that connects it, that can make the spout meat delicious. It's the same idea. It's interesting. So it's connected. So now, how does that connection play into this whole thing? So, to our face. No, this is the cone picture. It is the cone picture. Yeah. Yeah. And that's from Van Gogh. It says. No, I'm kidding. So that was actually from the Met. By Rabbi Yirmiyah, Tzir of Kli v'Chibur Mayim Mahu. What happens if you have half of Yisarons connected in a vessel, and then C, the third half, is connected by a stream of water or some kind of flow of water, and now one of them gets impure. So is everything, even the part that's connected with the water, does that become impure as well? So Kitnan Kli Mitzaref Mashu B'Sochol L'Kadesh. Maybe when that Mishnah taught that a vessel combines things in terms of contaminating the sacrificial foods, that's only honey mili digavai. That's only things inside the vessel. Aval debright, things that are connected but outside the vessel, low. That the Mishnah and Chagiga never spoke about. Oh, Dilma, or perhaps came in the mechaber. At the end of the day, it's connected, so it's connected. And let's say you'll tell me on one side of this question that the stream will connect. So then, chibur mayim v'tziruf kli. So then, if you have the outside one gets contaminated. So the outer one gets contaminated. So then chibur mayim v'tziruf kli v'nago Yomi b'chutz, and a Yom touches the outside the one that's outside mahu. Do we say that even if you'll connect C to A and B, that's only when you touch A and B, it'll contaminate C. But to touch C to contaminate what's inside the vessel, A and B, that's not going to go. Or maybe it doesn't matter, and since it's connected, and therefore even touching C will contaminate A and B. Teku. Yeah, Teku, we always say Eliyahu is going to come. So we saw yesterday, brachos, that Eliyahu came and taught somebody some halachos in the very beginning. So the question was, we don't base halacha off of angelic voices or angels. Lo bashamayim. So I say you can't learn Torah on the airplane. Yeah, okay. So Eliyahu, so the question is, how can we base halacha? The Chasmus Sofer says he comes in two forms. Eliyahu comes sometimes in a bodily form. Yeah, people 80 years ago saw him. Also, maybe even more recent. There, you could base it. When he comes in a bodily form, it says you could base halacha off him. When he comes in a other form, you can't. Someone asked him, when he comes in a bodily form, ask him all your tekus. So why did they do that? Okay. So now you have an isaron. You have a saran of flour. That would happen. It became shechilku. It got divided up, 2 parts, and v'nitma echad mehen, and one of the parts became contaminated. So, and now v'hinichu v'bisa, and now, meaning you have 2 halves. One became contaminated, and then you put it into a bowl.
Sounds like they were separate to start.
Separate? They're separate. And one of them became contaminated. And now, and now you put it into the bowl. And now, so now, can things that are already impure render things that are already impure? Can you have impurity on top of impurity? It's already impure. Now it's in a vessel, and the tvul yom touches the already impure one. So then, does that contaminate the other one that's not impure? So, miyam rinan savalo tuma olo. So, do you say that it's already satiated from impurity, and therefore, once it's satiated, you cannot impurify it more, and therefore it will not contaminate the other half of any saran? Olo, or you say no? You can have tuma on top of tuma, impurity on top of impurity. Amarle abaye yomi and stuff like tuma. Do you really say such a concept of impurity gets satiated? V'hatanan says the Mishnah. So, it's more and more complicated. So sudden tame, you have sheets that became tame midrash. Tame midrash means that we know that there are certain people that have a certain emission that they become a very high level of tuma, such as a zav. A zav is a certain emission that renders him tame. If he lies down on something, the rule is if he touches the sheet becomes a lower level of tuma, of impurity, and it cannot impurify people, only food and drink. If you lie down on the sheet, it's called tumas midras, that makes the sheet the same as you. And it can still contaminate people. So, a zav had tumas midras, and now what happens? He took the sheet, instead of a bed sheet, and hung it up as a curtain. Okay? Now, a curtain is not the same level as a sheet. A sheet is unique, because you lie down on a sheet, you don't lie down on a curtain. Last we checked. So he puts it up as a sheet, and so now it's tahor min midras. It's purified from its midras tuma. Aval tame maga midras, but it's still going to have tumas naga, meaning you lie down on it, and now the thing is going to be tame midras. But now you hung it up as a sheet. So the first opinion holds, to me, was novel. It sort of touches itself. It impurifies, meaning it's impure. So it retains that impurity. It's just now a sheet. It's now a curtain, not a sheet. So it's going to contaminate itself, but only with contamination of touching, not of lying down, because it's no longer a sheet. It's only a curtain. So Amar Rabbi Yossi be'ezeh midrash nagazeh. So says Rabbi Yossi that he argues and he says be'ezeh midrash nagazeh. What midras touched it? Meaning, how did it touch itself, so to speak, and contaminate it with the touching? The first thing said it's like you touched it. So seriously, how did that happen? Ella, what it means is she'im nagabo hazav, she'im nagabo hazav, she'im nagabo hazav, tame maga hazav ki nagabo hazav mia tame ve'afilu lebaso. That at the end of the day, Rabbi Yossi says that he has to touch it. If the before it became a curtain, there were two contaminations on it, meaning he lied down on it and he touched it. So then, when you make it into a curtain, it's going to retain that second level of impurity of touching. It got rid of the first one because it's no longer a sheet. However, it retains the second one. But what do you see? It can have 2 contaminations at the same time: a higher level of lying down and a lower level of touching. Amai lema savale tuma. Why? Say that its impurity was, so to speak, satiated, and it can't contain more impurity. So you see from here that 2 things could have impurity at the same time. So too by our case, if the half of an isarim became impure beforehand, and now you put it into a vessel with the other half that's pure, and now a tvul yom touches the half that's already impure, it should for sure impurify the other half. So what do you mean? You have a Mishnah saying that you could have 2 impurities on one thing. Amarlei umimaya, it's not necessarily a proof. Why? The ha'ishim nagabo hazav lebasar midras. It says, shim nagabo hazav. if a zav touched it, lebasar midras. So you want to tell me that the cases that he touched it after it was already impure by lying down, dilma mekame midras. Maybe he touched it beforehand. The have tuma chamura al tuma kala. I'll agree with you. It's two levels of impurity, but what came first? What came second? If the lower level of impurity came first, maybe only then a higher level of impurity can go on top of that. But of our case, the idi tumakala low, where it's both levels of lower level impurity. So who says there you can have two levels of lower level impurity on each other? Not going to work. Ela miseifa. Go to the end of the brayso. So what does it say at the end? More complicated. You have two sheets that are folded one on top of another. The yashav zav alehen. You have two sheets, and the zav lie down on top of the top sheet. Now what happens? The rule is that if a zav lies down on the top sheet, even the bottom sheet is going to be the same level of impurity as lying down. Even though you didn't lie down on it, but since you lie down on the one on top of it, so you have sheet A and sheet B. Sheet A is in direct contact with the person, and sheet B is in direct contact with sheet A. So sheet B will also have tummy midras. So now, hatakno tummy midras umaga. So it's going to have both of them, one for lying down and one for touching sheet A. So midras, sha'elyon tummy midras, vatak tummy midras umaga. Tachton tummy midras umaga. So umaga midras. Matachton tummy midras umaga midras. Meaning it's tummy from its own because it's someone lie down on the sheet above it, so it gets tummy midras, and also because it got touched. So you see, it has two levels of impurity. So va'amai lema savle tuma, say that the impurity was already satiated and it can't contain more impurity. Hasan bebas achas hacha bezacharzeh. There, we're saying that it happened all simultaneously, that it got both levels of impurity. Maybe the rule is that you can have both levels of impurity if it happens simultaneously. But if it didn't happen simultaneously, rather it happened consecutively, one after another, like our case of the flour, therefore, you once it's already had one level of impurity, it cannot get another level of impurity. So our question remains. Amar Rava, Isaran shechilkuv abed echad mehen. Now, you have a half of a measurement of flour that got divided up, A and B. The abed echad mehen, A got lost. And now what happened? The hifresh C. Hifresh acher tachtav. You replaced A with C. Hifresh acher tachtav. So the nimtza arisha, now you found A. And now what you do? You put them all together in one bowl. The harish shloshta menachem bebisa. Now what happened? So, maybe for simplicity's sake, let's say A got lost, B replaced A, and C's the other half, just to make it easier. So now, nitma avod, let's say the one that got lost, A, got contaminated. So nitma avod. So avod virishon mitzarfin. The one that got lost and the original other half that didn't get lost will combine together and they'll impurify it. Mufrash ein mitzarf. The backup B that backed up A doesn't combine. Nitma mufrash, the one that replaced B, that replaced A, became contaminated. What happens? Mufrash verishon mitzarfin. B and C will combine because they're the current flour offering. So mufrash verishon mitzarfin. Avod ein mitzarfin. The one that got lost does not combine. Now nitma rishon, the first other half that didn't get lost, if that gets contaminated, so then shnehem mitzarfin. Then both A and both C are going to combine, and they're going to become contaminated. Because really, this one can combine with either one. It originally combined with A, and now it's combining with C. So the vessel will combine them all, and we'll combine them all, and they're all going to be impure. Okay, stop there.